What's up, guys? My name is Jedith, and the day has finally come. After weeks of not getting even mentioned in patch notes, this week we finally got some substantial changes, and these are actually very, very promising. It came at a perfect time because I just did a podcast the other day where I complained for an hour straight about how disappointed I was with Havoc and the attention it wasn't getting. Well, here we are. We finally got the attention. So we're going to read over these notes. I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts as we go through. And there's a few things that I'll actually demonstrate in the game to show you how they exactly work. First thing you need to know, going into patch 11.1, they got rid of any means necessary. So any means necessary used to convert any ability that had a spell school that wasn't chaos into chaos. When it becomes chaos, then it scales with our mastery. Our mastery increases the damage of our chaos damage. What that was affecting were things like Immolation Aura, Demon Blades, Sigil of Flame, these minor things, right? It wasn't actually doing as much as it was leading on that it might have been doing. That talent was abolished, and now it's been replaced with Screaming Brutality. So I just want you guys to know that before we start reading these notes, because a lot of the changes that were made with that in mind, to compensate for losing any means necessary. So like I said, without any means necessary, Immolation Aura was no longer being converted into chaos damage. So we need to buff it. So Immolation Aura damage increased by 6% and Sigil of Flame damage increased by 6%. Both of these were being converted to chaos, and they are no longer for now. Now we're going to look at Fellscarred. So Demon Surge damage increased by 40%. That was another ability that was getting converted into chaos damage. It's originally fire. It was being converted into chaos damage by any means necessary. Now it's not. So they had to buff it to make up for that loss. So it's been buffed by 40%. Burning Blades now deals 50% of listed ability damage over 6 seconds, was 35. So this is a pretty big increase. Burning Blades did a lot of damage in the past because it was fire damage, and of course that was getting converted into chaos, and it was double dipping. So now that AMN has been taken away, of course they have to buff this as well to make up for it. And this is an interesting one. Flamebound now increases Immolation Aura critical damage bonus by 30%, was 25. So we're getting an extra 5% critical damage bonus onto Immolation Aura. And of course, this is super important because the more damage that Immolation Aura can do, the more damage that is fed into our Rage Fire. This is a pretty good change. I like this. Now, the Havoc specific changes. Our Mastery, Demonic Presence effectiveness increased by 25%. So whatever Mastery you have right now on live, you're going to increase that by 25% of what you have, right? So you're not adding an extra 25 onto whatever number you see here. It's going to be 25% of that number. So right now I have 90% mastery, which is actually pretty insane. I do have some pretty big mastery items equipped right now. I have Circe's Circlet, which is giving me a ton. The Jaster's Diamond, which is a ring from the next raid. It has 6,000 mastery. I also have the Eye of Kazan, which is 1,700 mastery. I have some pretty big mastery items. So of course, it's going to look a little inflated now. But now also, because our mastery has been increased, that also means that the value of Student of Suffering has gone up as well. So now Student of Suffering increases mastery by 27%, and that is additive. So it actually adds 27% onto whatever we see here. So I have 90% now. I'm going to use Sigil of Flame to get Student of Suffering, and it goes up to 117%. And this is actually pretty impactful when you get up to these levels of mastery. And as you get into DR, that means you need more mastery to even just get 1%. So being at 90% and getting an extra 27% just tacked on top of that is pretty massive. Okay, and now Soul Scar damage reduced to 80% of your Throw Glaive, was 100%. I think they just dipped this down a little bit because, of course, they increased our mastery. So Soul Scar does chaos damage. So they just need to balance that out a little bit. Drop that down by 20%, and we're getting 25 extra percent on our mastery. So they're just trying to balance things here. Now, this is a change that we all saw coming. A Fire Inside now also causes your Immolation Aura to deal chaos damage instead of fire, in addition to its existing effects. So if we look at the tooltip here, it says Immolation Aura has 1 additional charge, 30% chance to refund a charge when used, and deals chaos damage instead of fire. You can have multiple Immolation Auras active at a time. This saves the day with Rage Fire and Immolation Aura. Now it's actually going to do damage again. Because losing AMN and not having Immolation Aura convert into chaos damage from fire damage was making the whole thing, the whole system of Rage Fire and Immolation Aura just dead in the water. You would never use it. But now that we have that built into a Fire Inside, it's being converted into chaos and affected by our mastery, meaning it does a lot of damage again. Cycle of Hatred, additional aura stacks generated now persist until the Demon Hunter has been out of combat for 60 seconds without casting I-Beam. This is a fantastic change. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like. Let me just switch my talents around here. So when you put 2 points into Cycle of Hatred, it's going to start you off with 1 stack. So this 1 stack means I-Beam will reduce the cooldown of your next I-Beam by 5 seconds. So the next I-Beam that we use is going to make the next I-Beam be on a 35-second cooldown. And now we have 2 stacks of Cycle of Hatred. So now I-Beam will reduce the cooldown of your next I-Beam by 10 seconds. So that's meta. And then we're going to use I-Beam. We have 3 stacks. It's reducing it by 15. So if we use another I-Beam in a second here when it comes up. Okay, here it comes. We're going to use that. Now we have 4 stacks of Cycle of Hatred. So I-Beam will reduce the cooldown of your next I-Beam by 20 seconds. So that's where it caps. So as long as you have these 4 stacks, your I-Beam is on a 20-second cooldown. This is pretty big because this means if you are running like an Essence Break build where you're using Essence Break and I-Beam every 40 seconds, this also means you're going to have I-Beam in between those windows in your 20-second windows. Normally, you would only have Vengeful Retreat in between your Essence Break windows, but now you're going to have an I-Beam to squeeze in there as well. So you have these 4 stacks, and then after you leave combat, these stacks will persist for 60 seconds. As long as you're staying out of combat for 60 seconds, they'll stay. Now what you can do is you can I-Beam and it will refresh those. It'll refresh that duration. There isn't actually a countdown on it, but it's counting down to 60 seconds. Cool thing is that this also persists through death. So if you die during a raid fight, you're not going to lose all your stacks. If you get rezzed within 60 seconds, you get back up and you're still going to have all your stacks. This also means in Mythic Plus, for the most part, as long as you're staying in combat and not being out of combat for more than a minute, you will always have a 20-second I-Beam, which is pretty fantastic. Now, I do think the whole ramping up in stacks to get to 4, it's a little wonky because it does throw off the timing of your abilities a little bit as you're getting up to the 4 stacks, but then eventually you'll be able to resync everything and get it all back in order. I don't know. I don't necessarily like the ramping of it, but I do like the change that has been made where it persists for 60 seconds out of combat. Fantastic change. Okay, fixed an issue when talented into both Furious Throws and Screaming Brutality that was unintentionally causing a triggered throw glaive to enforce its 25 Fury cost. So I think I mentioned this in my last video, but what was happening, we have this new talent called Screaming Brutality, and you might recognize it. It's essentially the tier bonus effect from Dragonflight Season 3, where Blade Dance automatically triggers Throw Glaive on your primary target for 100% damage, and each slash has a 50% chance to throw glaive an enemy for 35% damage. So this was like a fan favorite for every Demon Hunter player. Everyone loved this. So it's very cool to see it now back in the tree. But what was happening was when you take Furious Throws, Throw Glaive now costs 25 Fury and throws a second glaive at the target. When you would press Blade Dance with both of these talents, it would charge you the 35 Fury from Blade Dance and then the extra 25 Fury from the Throw Glaive. So you were running out of Fury incredibly fast, insanely fast. So that has been fixed. The problem now, though, I don't know what they did or if they're going to fix this or what. If you look at my Throw Glaive charges here, you can see we have 2. I'm going to press Blade Dance, and it doesn't actually use a charge. It does throw a Throw Glaive, but it doesn't use a charge. They didn't quite get it perfect. But this is kind of, we can work around this. Even though it doesn't use a charge, you can still manually throw the glaives. And because we have 2 charges, you can kind of have one always on cooldown and rolling. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's something they fixed, which is very good to see, because if we were using all of that Fury with every Blade Dance use, man, we would not have Fury to use anything else. So I'm super glad they fixed that. Fixed an issue when talented into Screaming Brutality that was frequently causing an unintended additional Throw Glaive damage event. Honestly, not sure what this was, but if it's an issue and they fixed it, then that's great. Now, Felsguard, Enduring Torment now increases Blade Dance and Chaos Strike damage while not in demon form by 15%. Was 10%. So that is this one right here. Enduring Torment. It used to be 10%. Now it's 5%. It's a little damage boost. You can't complain about a little extra damage, right? 5% extra damage, we'll take it. Now, of course, this will get less use if you're running a Cycle of Hatred build, because, using I-Beam every 20 seconds now instead of 40, you're going to be spending more time in demon form, meaning you don't get any benefit of this talent. And now, Flamebound Radius bonus now also affects Rage Fire. So this is something I want to put into perspective for you guys, right? We have a 6% damage increase to Immolation Aura, a mastery increase. So the effectiveness of our mastery increased by 25%. We also have a Fire Inside, converting Immolation Aura to chaos damage. So that's working with the mastery. Flamebound now increases Immolation Aura critical damage bonus by 30%, was 25. So we have an extra crit damage modifier onto Immolation Aura. And then we have Flamebound's radius bonus now also affects Ragefire. Immolation Aura has 2 yards increased radius and 30% increased critical strike damage bonus. This, I don't think people realize how much damage Immolation Aura and Ragefire are actually going to do with all of these buffs. This is going to be pretty insane. The other thing to remember now is because we're having Throwglaives used for us all the time, we're able to spread Burning Wound on a pack of mobs much easier. We're not having to tab target or manually press Throwglaive as we run into a pack to get Burning Wound spread around the mobs. This is kind of just going to happen on its own. So our Immolation Aura damage is going to be increased. Then we have Ragefire just popping off, doing more crit damage. The radius of it is being increased, which means it's going to hit more mobs, right? The explosion essentially is getting bigger. Immolation Aura and Ragefire are going to absolutely crank with these changes. Now, another thing I want to point out that was changed that didn't get mentioned in the patch notes is Demonic Intensity. So let me just read this to you so you understand what it does. Activating Metamorphosis greatly empowers Eye-Beam, Immolation Aura, and Sigil of Flame. Demon Surge damage is increased by 10% for each time it previously triggered while your demon form is active. So the way it works on live is you press Eye-Beam, you get 2 Demon Surges to spend. You spend them with Death Sweep and Annihilation, right? So we would press Death Sweep, we'd get a stack of Demonic Intensity. We'd press Annihilation, we'd get a second stack of Demonic Intensity. Then we would press Meta. Unfortunately, pressing Meta would reset those stacks, but then after Meta, we have 5 more Demon Surges to use, right? So we'd press Death Sweep, we'd get a stack. We'd press Annihilation, we'd get a stack. We'd press Immolation Aura, get a 3rd stack. Press Sigil of Flame, we'd get a 4th stack. And then finish with Eye-Beam, and we'd get our 5th stack. But it did seem a little weird because we'd have this 5th stack and then have nothing to use it on. So they've changed it now to better reflect how that actually works. So the way that it works now is after you press Meta, you're only going to go up to 4 stacks. And this is just to better reflect how it's actually working. And the way that is when you press a Demon Surge, you get the buff. That buff is only applied to the next Demon Surge. So just to give you an example, I'm going to press Meta, and then we're going to have 5 Demon Surges to use. The way this is going to work is the very first Demon Surge that I use is essentially going to be raw. It's not going to have any buff affecting it. And then from there, Demonic Intensity will go up to 4, and the final Demon Surge that we spend is going to be affected by the buff, and that's where it ends, right? So we're going to Meta, and we have 5 to spend. We're at 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 4 stacks, and then this is the final one. That 4th one was affected by the 4th stack, and we don't gain another one, so it stops at 4. This isn't actually a change to how it has been functioning. This is exactly how it's been functioning on live. They just changed the buff stacking to better represent what is actually happening, so it's more clear to players. So now you're probably asking, Jedith, what hero talent tree are we going to be using in the new patch? Felsguard or Eldrazi Reaver? I don't know for sure yet. We still have to do some sims. There's still a few things that need to be fixed in both hero talent trees, some bugs that need to be tweaked and ironed out. The one thing I will say is Felsguard is looking a lot better than where it was left off. So this is great to see. Now we can kind of go forward knowing that might have 2 options rather than just being stuck with one that nobody really enjoys. Felsguard is actually looking a lot better and has a lot of potential. So again, this was just great to see. It's been weeks since we've seen actual substantial changes. We finally got them, and I don't think this is the last of them. There should be more coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned. If you guys like this video, give it a like. Make sure you sub to the YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.